Welcome to your iconic image. If you want to take control of your image and be a power player in your space, then this is the show for you. Here we will arm you with tools and information to help you grow your brand on purpose. I'm your host, Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Now let's dive into today's episode. As an elite performance strategist with vast experience in branding and reputation management, Beth Strange has spent years assisting high-profile clients and top performers define and refine their presence and become influential. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And, we've talked before today, and this is my oxygen. So I'm thrilled to be able to have a conversation about building iconic brand.
So let's start at the beginning. What are the elements that make up an iconic brand?
Okay, well, there are like 5 gazillion. So, I want to talk there. We'll go at the very root. When we think about iconic brands, and I'm going to give some examples, but I don't want to give too many names every time we talk about a principle, because I want people to come up in their own mind as they listen to this. Oh, that makes me think of this person, or that makes me think of that product. And so I don't want to define the actual brand too much for people. Mm-hmm. So I'll speak in general terms, and then I'll give specific examples. But as soon as I give an example, then people's vision is going to narrow. So what makes up an iconic brand? What are the elements? The reason that I said I wanted to go, kind of anonymous and general is it really is almost innumerable small, barely perceptible elements that kind of weave into a tapestry, for example. And a lot of iconic brands have arrived by strategy and by default. And so that means that some of the iconic brands, built their brand, brick by brick with a very strategic plan, and others kind of fell into it by, fortuitous, maybe they were born into money. I'm having such a hard time not giving examples, but I don't think that Kim Kardashian had a brick by brick strategy that catapulted her, as an icon. Other, business people, for example, Warren Buffett as an iconic brand, a lot more strategic than, some of the celebrities that we see. So there is a, kind of a magic potion and mix of how did people get where they are? And again, my mind is just being flooded. But like Coco Chanel, who was orphaned, how did she get to be that iconic brand? We can look at professional athletes who, were drafted into the professional realms out of high school. How strategic were they in building their brand? So do you hear what I'm saying? That mm-hmm. It's both strategy and life takes them there. But if you're talking about brand strategy, there are, and again, it's a long list and a lot of interplay, but there are elements of the strategy.
Yeah, because most of us, let's face it, are not born into it. So we need strategy. So help us out with that. Talk to us about what goes into that.
So, I have some lists here. I told you I have a lot of ideas to share. I have some lists, and some ideas are more succinct, and then I have a list of 10. So let me start with what's called, the branding pyramid. And we can apply these very basic principles to startup brands that aren't iconic and don't even aspire to be iconic, and to well-established iconic brands. So I would ask, both you and me and our listeners to think of some brands that stand out in your mind. When you think, that's an icon, a person or a product, you think in your own mind. We'll go anonymously here. But there is a branding pyramid, and at the base, the wide part of the bottom, and all of these start with P. So P for pyramid, and then the bottom is purpose. What is the brand's purpose? And again, we can think about brands that we need, that we use every day, brands that we don't respect, brands we don't like. But what is the purpose of the brand? And then that spills into, what are the values? What's the mission? So people who are wanting to build an iconic brand should build that at the base. What is the purpose of your brand, your product's brand, your company's brand? What's the purpose? That's the bottom. Then the second tier, as we go up and narrow a little bit, let me pause. Your purpose will be widespread, and you'll go deep, but it will be wide. Then we'll narrow a little bit. What is the personality of your brand? Now, that's not the best word. What are the characteristics? What is the visual identity of your brand? Characteristics is a better word, but personality has a piece. So what is the personality? Is it daring and risky? Is it traditional and conservative? Is it philanthropic? Is it luxury? What are the characteristics of the brand? So anyone wanting to build or evaluate an iconic brand, really can look at characteristics of the personality of the brand. Then as we go more and more narrow, what's the promise of the brand? What problem do you solve for your people? What are you giving with your brand? What are you promising? And maybe it's just entertainment. Maybe it's a good time. Maybe it's, life-saving, medical advancements. What are you promising? What are you giving your people, your community, your constituents? And it might be, earth-shatteringly significant, or it might be, and a lot of brands really aren't giving back. They're not really providing much value, and they usually are a flash and burn kind of brand. And then at the very top, and this is where we need to really strategize and constantly be evaluating and controlling the point of difference. Again, just trying to find the P's, but the point of difference, what makes you one of a kind? So these iconic brands, they are one of a kind. They are distinct. Unique is not the best word. I don't get into too much wordsmithing here, but when you think about your point of difference in building or evaluating an iconic brand, what is the distinction? What is different? What makes you one of a kind? So there's a nice little pyramid: your purpose, your personality, your promise, and your point of distinction. It's fun to look at iconic brands and talk about those. And I am going to use some examples in a minute, but I really wanted our listeners to be able to think broadly without getting, stuck in a corner with a brand.
And I love that. And can you build an iconic brand without any of these steps in the pyramid?
No, it will fall over. So I don't want to, we could take one brand and pick it apart and make it pretty obvious, but those are obvious. Any product, for example, has to have, purpose, personality, promise, and point of distinction. So you've got to have them. It won't work without it.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So how much of it can we control and how much of it is beyond our control?
I will submit that we can and must control all of it. And we're going to spill a little bit into reputation management because we talk about image, brand, reputation, PR, presence. They all dovetail. They are not one of them is an island. So
talk to us. What's the difference between the three?
Okay. We'll go here. This will be the pre-K version of the distinction between those. So every individual has an image, but not every individual has a brand. And a person's image essentially is how they seem. Do they seem happy, defensive, successful, sick? How do they seem? Do they seem like a people person? Are they a loner? How do people seem is their image. And generally, this is the physical manifestation of a human being. How do they look? How do they talk? How do they move? How do they interact with others? Everyone has an image. We can't, because we're alive, we have an image. Brand, and let me talk for a minute. When I define these, let's just talk about people. It'll be easier.
Mm-hmm.
Brand is an individual's representation in the marketplace. So as soon as a person appears in a market, they now have a brand. What is the representation of their image as their brand in the marketplace? How do they interact? How do they appear? I'll give you the ABCs, that makes it easy. How do they appear? Their collaterals, their website, what does their product look like? Their company space, how do they appear in the marketplace? How do they behave in the marketplace for B? How do they behave? What are their their actions and activities and the behavior of the company and the people in it, in the marketplace. And then C is for communicate. How are they communicating in the marketplace? And I'm not talking just about market strategy, but what is their communication like? Are they sophisticated? Are they approachable? Are they authoritative? Are they traditional, long lasting? How do they communicate in the marketplace? So image is just a person. My grandmother did not appear in the marketplace, so she had a very strong image, but no brand. There was no identity for her in the marketplace. And then reputation are the long-standing beliefs of others about your image and your brand. So image and brand are self-focused, are self-defined, and then reputation is other-defined. Does that help a little bit?
It does. It does. And, I have often said to people when it comes to your reputation that it's very difficult and sometimes impossible to dictate what others think of you, but you can certainly steer the conversation. And so that steering of the conversation seems to be what your brand management and your reputation management would be.
Right on, spot on. You hit the nail on the head there too. And maybe you asked me this at the beginning. I realized I was speaking and not answering one of your questions. I think you asked me, what is the definition of an iconic brand, or what does make that? And I launched into strategy without a definition. When we, again, get in your own mind, some of the iconic brands of people or products that you think of, and a very broad, basic definition of an iconic brand is a person or product that inspires unbreakable loyalty in its people. So that should fit when you're thinking about your people or your product. It has inspired unbreakable loyalty in its people. And let me give you some examples here now, because I want to get a little more instructive, I guess. When you think about unbreakable loyalty in its people, well, do you want to give me one, or should I tell you the ones that just, are kind of at the top of the list?
I would say one is Apple.
Yep. So Apple's a big one. How about Disney?
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting, and again, we could talk for hours and hours on this topic. But not too many years ago, I was doing research when I owned my former company, and it just came up on the Forbes list for the year. The most powerful brand in the world by all the metrics that are used to give that honor every year, the most powerful brand in the world was Lego. And Apple was second. And I thought that was really interesting. And there are a lot of reasons why. But if you think about Lego and where it is, the Lego movie, we're going to talk about what keeps a brand iconic. Lego really is doing things right. So again, these brands creating this unspeakable, unbreakable loyalty in their people. That's number one. And number two, iconic brands polarize their people. When you think about it, and there's so much going on in the news right now, Nike is one that I always talk about. So think about it. Nike really has continued as their brand evolves to polarize their people. Now, that's not a negative thing. We should all be polarizing. We should have people who are either with us or not so much. They'd rather go somewhere else. And it's interesting, and this, I'll have some proof for you that polarizing is one of the smartest brand strategies for up and coming iconic brands. Think about Coke and Pepsi. There isn't just Coke and there isn't just Pepsi. They are polarizing, and people either love their Pepsi products or they love their Coca-Cola products, but very often they will not cross over. Gosh, my brother's one of the directors of marketing or design for Hershey. He's gonna not be happy if I misspeak this, but I think it's Mars Company. Everybody look this up and find the answer on your own. Almond Joy and Mounds did it perfectly. If you're old enough to remember their jingle, Almond Joy's got nuts, Mounds don't. Mm-hmm. And people either wanted nuts or they didn't want nuts, but the candy company knew that they needed to polarize their people. And so they created a candy bar and a jingle and a whole brand strategy around, Almond Joy's got nuts, Mounds don't.
Right.
So iconic brands, they have, this unshakable loyalty, and they will polarize their people.
So
I mean, look
So
at it.
two things. First of all, I agree, because when we create a brand or a product or any of those kinds of things, we do it for someone, not everybody. It's someone, and it's speaking to that one, and it will eliminate others. Now, how do we build that unshakable loyalty?
Here you go.
How do you get to that level?
So let's go through. I have 10 ideas for us here. So when we did our pyramid, we've embodied most, if not all of these 10 in there. So let's just break it down a little bit more. And these aren't in any particular order, because at certain places in an icon being built, they will focus more on one, or one over the other at different times in their growth. So no particular order. The first one takes us to the top of the pyramid, that point of distinction, and that is be distinct. There are innumerable kinds of sneakers out there. So a sneaker is nothing new, or an athletic shoe or a tennis shoe or whatever you call it in your part of the world. But in 1987, when Nike came out with that air bubble and they put it in the bottom of their Air Max, no one else, had ever done this. And when iconic brands are being built, there's so much to say about this. They are wizards at trademarking and patenting and registering trademarks for parts of their brand. And I could tell you a lot of stories about that because it's been a big part of my work. So being distinct and then protecting that distinction that you're creating as a brand is critical. Number two, we need to appeal emotionally to our community as people are building their brands. And again, I'll let all of the listeners think about people or products and the emotional connection that gets built. And it's very strategically done. That's not by happenstance most of the time. Think about Google, when search engines were all started popping up longer ago than we'd probably think. Think about all your search engines, Yahoo and Bing and all those. Google's brand, as they developed that, was not only that it was very simple and streamlined, it was very easy to use. And you know what Google's home search engine page looks like. There's nothing really on there except the little whatever they're doing with the Google for the day. While others are not like that. So their appeal emotionally to people was, we're easy. We're going to be really easy for you to use. So, and brands, gosh, they can be loaded with emotion for their people. Number three, and this might be, I could say this about each one. This is the most important because emotion is the most important. If there's no emotional connection, your people will leave you. But number three, and this applies to all brands, even if they're not iconic, you must innovate. You must be able to pivot. You must be able to realign. And please, can we all just stop using it's not even a word, reinvent? It's not possible. I'm going to do a whole research paper on there's no such thing as reinvent. Once something's been invented, it's invented. You can't invent it again. We're talking about pivoting and innovating a product. And the big one, well, there's so many, but one of the big ones is Netflix versus Blockbuster. When all of those things started changing in the way people wanted to view media, Netflix, as we know, just immediately, daily, weekly, monthly, was changing the way that they could interact with their customer. Blockbuster didn't do it. Blockbuster thought, you know what, we're going to stay with our feet, firmly planted here, and we're not changing anything. And we all know what happened to Blockbuster. So innovate by reflecting with your people and your community. Fourth, and this kind of goes with emotion, but it's different. This is generate affinity. In other words, be able to generate love and affinity for a life that your people want, a lifestyle, something an idea that people want to buy. Here's an example for you to hang on this. Harley Davidson, just brilliant at building an affinity for a lifestyle that their people wanted. I mean, there are a lot of different motorcycles out there, makes and models, but Harley Davidson, that iconic brand of this is the kind of life you can have. So create an affinity. What your people aren't just buying you and your product, they're buying an idea and a lifestyle frequently. 5, while you're innovating, remain true and committed to your purpose and your values and going up the ladder. Now, I'll give you an example there. Coca-Cola is a fascinating brand to evaluate and study in so many ways. So many ways. They're one of my favorites. Anyway, think of so many things we could talk about them. Their logo, for example, they don't really have an icon. They have a font logo. Coca-Cola has been pretty much, offering the same kind of product for years. When the actual drink, Coca-Cola itself, in the mid-'80s, I don't know what was going on in the mid-'80s, brands were like trying all kinds of things.
It was a crazy time, the mid-'80s.
Yes. Coca-Cola changed its flavor, and I don't know what it was. It wasn't the Coke Zero, it was before that, but they changed their formula to make it better, and
nobody liked it.
Their people, yeah. So you see, and it's good with the brand to dip our toes in test waters. We have to be doing that constantly, but you need to stay committed to your core purpose, value, or product, and not shake that up too much. Number 6, be the one and only. As I said, there's a million sneakers out there, but Nike was the one and only with the bubble. Amazon as a brand is one of the most fascinating brands to study and evaluate. Their one-click checkout, they wanted that. They wanted to own that one-click checkout. And in some ways, they've trademarked and patented that. There are some other small or larger companies, but nobody has the one-click checkout like Amazon does. So while there are many retailers selling similar things, what is the element in an iconic brand that, even if it's very small, is the one and only? Got to be something one and only about your brand. Do you want me to keep going? Do you have any
Yes. Nope.
I'm on number 7 out of 10 notes that I made.
Keep going.
This is huge. This is the most important. This is my favorite one. Concentrate on your people, not your product. Now, of course, product development is enormously critical for many, many brands, but concentrate on your people, not your product. Starbucks kills it with that. They came up and wanted to be yet another coffee cafe. And we're not going to talk about who's got better coffee, Dunkin' or Starbucks, but, coffee was the product, but their people was what built that iconic brand. You get your name on your mug, and the barista's going to call your name, and what it looks like inside, and who are they serving? It was all about the people. It wasn't really not about the coffee at all. Mm-hmm. It was all about the people. So, when we build brands, iconic brands are built by focusing on the people first and the product second. And
at the end of the day, people really just want to be seen and heard. And so when we are able to do that, it will go a very, very long way.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. See and hear your people and let them know that you see them and hear them. Yeah. Very well said, Marlana. You can't do it without this. You have to become a master storyteller. Become a master storyteller. And this allows you to create affinity. It allows you to create emotion. It allows you to see your people first. But become a masterful storyteller. And one of the brands that's done this the best is Girl Scouts, the Girl Scouts of America, and their cookie sales. And here we have these young girls. This year, a couple times when I different places bought Girl Scout cookies, I would see these young, in my mind's eye, entrepreneurs or these young giants that were out there selling these cookies to create a story for their life. And Girl Scouts of America and their Girl Scout cookie product, they're telling this story about these young girls. So many brands tell a story. Some do it well, some don't. The North Face is another one. They tell the story of their people and how they live their lives and what they're doing. So iconic brands are masters at storytelling. This is not true of all brands, but it is true of iconic brands. Become elite in at least some area of what your brand represents. So here we're going to go. One of my great loves is in my life are exotic cars. And so if we look at my Maserati, it is elite in so many ways. That buttery, European leather. No other car is like that. Yeah. So how is the brand? And we could talk about people too. I'm trying not to name specific people because they're very polarizing, and I don't. Some people won't like them, some people will. But think about your people who are icons in your mind. We could do Coco Chanel, and she's so transcendent. The fabrics of the Chanel brand, I mean, you really can't go any better or higher in luxury clothing for women. The quality of the fibers and the fabrics of the Chanel brand are the most elite on the market. So iconic brands, they found something to make at least a portion of their brand elite. And number 10, start with the focus being on the audience. Now, we talked about seeing your people first, but the focus needs to be on the audience and how great they can be or become first before how great the brand is. How great can the life of your buyer or your people be? I'll go back to Nike again because we've talked about that. Nike doesn't spend its time talking at all or much at all about how great is the Nike brand, but boy, do they talk about what can you do if you're wearing our product? How great can you become? And I've worked a lot with luxury brands, and we can talk about cigars, for example. That's a bad example. I don't want to use that. Nobody should be smoking. But when you look at cigar brands, what the message that they're giving is not how great is our cigar, but how great are you if you're smoking our cigar? Mm-hmm. How great are you if you're driving this? How great are you? How great are you if you're donating to Doctors Without Borders? Let's get into something that that really gives back. So it's about the audience being paramount and how the audience's life can be changed or blessed if they are involved in your brand. And this is really interesting. If we look at celebrities, for example, who kind of come and go, mm-hmm. maybe a flash in the pan in music or acting or influencers, for example, if their brand is created around how great they are, they come and go pretty fast. Mm-hmm. If the brand is created around how great are my people, that's what makes a long-lasting, iconic brand. And that was number 10. So I have a lot more notes, but
because at the end of the day, it's true. And I know I've had this conversation with various people along the way, is your brand isn't really about you. It's always about the people you serve and what it can do for them, how it can transform their lives, what their experience is, all of those things. It's not about you.
Absolutely. And we talk about brand strategy and the hundreds of elements that go into that, but that is so that we can address that element. I used to say to my image clients, get your clothes out the night before, figure out what your day looks like on Monday, get your clothes out Sunday night so that Monday you can get up and focus on things that are really important because your clothes aren't the most important thing. So get that out of the way so you can focus on your people and you can focus on your service. And you're right. You really did say it really perfectly that we drill down on these elements and they have to be evaluated and controlled constantly. But we do that so that we can serve our people in the best way that we can. And you're right. And that's what builds the iconic brand.
So if we were starting from ground zero today, what's the one thing that we can do today to start to put all these elements in place?
I think go to the base of the pyramid, really define what's your purpose, what's your big why, but what's the big why of your product? What's the big why for your people? Start at the base of the pyramid. Define your purpose, your mission, your values, whatever that. And they can be very, you should be constantly digging deeper and deeper and deeper into your purpose. But your mission can be very simple. I know we're almost at the end of our time, but my mission, and I've crafted this over decades, and every word is deep for me. My mission is create abundance with good, extraordinary people. every one of those words is important in its own right.
Mm.
So start at the base. What is your purpose? Why do you exist? Why does your product exist? And build from there.
One of the best things I heard recently, I want to say it was Donald Miller, say that the easiest way to answer your why is by finishing it and saying because. So your why will always be linked to your because. And
Brilliant.
So you have given us a lot of great stuff today, Beth, and I thank you so much for all of it. So what's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
I've thought about this. I've actually thought about this a lot. I can give you pieces of advice, but like I've said, I'm like 109 years old. I look at all of the advice I've been given in my life, and it really is, like I said at the beginning, a tapestry. Like it's hard to say which thread makes the tapestry. I just have so many. I want to give you an answer. Maybe I'll say this one. Whenever my father hangs up the phone with any of my children or my grandchildren, he doesn't say this to me. He only says it to my children and grandchildren. He always, tells them that he loves them and then says, "Don't take any wooden nickels." So, and we actually had a long conversation about where that expression came from. I won't go into that here, but to me, it means just be really thoughtful about your life. Be thoughtful about your actions. Live your life by design and not default. So that's my father's favorite piece of advice. I'll go with that one. Actually, what he says to me before he hangs up is he always says, "I love you. It was good to hear your melodious voice."
So now tell us one thing on your bucket list.
Okay, now here, and I'm trying to play along, but I am the anti-bucket list. I am the anti-bucket list queen. I don't have a bucket list. I don't have a list. Bucket lists don't work for me. Something in a bucket list, and this is from listening to other people who I know who have bucket lists. It means someday I hope that somehow I might be able to go to the Mediterranean. Well, if it's important to me, I put it on my schedule, I put it on my calendar, I create a strategy, and I do it. If it's not important to me, I don't give it any thought or attention or time, and until it, pops up again and again. And, I went skydiving. That wasn't on my bucket list. Somebody said, "Hey, do you want to go skydiving?" And I thought, yes, I want to do that. Let's go on Sunday. So is there
anything that you want to put on your schedule next that you can think of?
We're thinking about up-leveling our yacht, selling our little yacht and we're going to scale by scaling back, we think. But yeah, I just don't live like that. You know what I mean?
Yes. Good for you.
I think they have like big things they want to do. I just want to cherish my family. I don't have anywhere I want to go or anything else. I just want to spend the rest of my life, just cherishing my loved ones.
I love that. So when the toy companies finally get around to making an action figure of you, what 2 accessories will it come with?
So I've thought about this. My calendar. I am a calendar ninja. I have blocks of, everything is I have blocks of joy on my calendar. I have all of my work, all of my meetings, my date nights, with my husband. So I'm a calendar ninja. Every part of my calendar is blocked. Can't live without that. And that doesn't mean that every hour schedule I've got, Saturday afternoon till Sunday night is joy time. And my second would be, I'm going to say my Maserati, only because it's the tangible in my life that represents a lot to me. Mm-hmm. It takes me places. It represents, my hard work. So, and I just love the way it looks. So my calendar and my little Maserati.
And last thing, how do people find you?
My name, it's the easiest way to find me, BethStrange.com. You can email me, Beth@BethStrange.com, just my name. If you go on Facebook, just search me. I think my middle name is on Facebook, but on social media, most social media, Twitter, Instagram, just look for Beth Strange. I think on Instagram it's Beth.Strange, but.
And I know I encourage everybody to look for you, follow you, because you've been doing some great video content with information and tips just like you gave us today. And if anybody wants to work with you, they have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Oh, what a thrill. You talk about an iconic woman. I'm not even going to talk about your brand and your photography, but just as a woman, I adore you, and you have given so much to the world. People need you. They need to be with you.
Thank you so very much for that. And I adore you right back. Thanks for being here, Beth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Please comment, like, or share this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more information on how I can help you create your iconic image, visit marlanasemenza.com.